So this is Chris from the Art of Dismantling, and we are fortunate enough to have caught up with Franklin Lopez, who's on tour viewing his new film, End Civ. And Franklin, why don't you start by giving us a brief explanation of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Franklin Lopez, and I am a filmmaker, video activist, troublemaker based in Vancouver, BC. I run a website called submedia.tv that features videos by myself and other video makers about radical politics, radical activism, what I call the motherfucking resistance. And I recently completed a film called End Civ, which is inspired by the writings of Derrick Jensen, who is one of the most prolific writers in the radical environmental movement right now.
What goals do you have with End Civ and Submedia and its impact on the world?
With Submedia, specifically with the new show that I do, it's The End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. My goal is to show people that we're not alone in the struggle and the resistance. Where the news may show, like mainstream news may show little bits of resistance here and there, I kind of collate like the best resistance news of that particular week and just kind of put it all in one block. And my goal with, like I said, my goal with that is to show that we're not alone and to re-inspire people that resistance does work and resistance can get us the goods. And the response that I usually get from people is very positive. No matter where I go, people just say, like, don't ever stop doing the show because this is what keeps me going. With End Civ, I made the film specifically for activists, people who have a certain amount of political analysis already. I didn't do this film for the majority of the population. And the reason I made this film was to make activists question whether or not what they were doing or what they have been doing over these years is working or not. And my goal was to push these people over the edge and to basically take more direct action to basically solve the problems that we're facing right now, with a very deep critique of industrial civilization.
What first led you to the decision to utilize your gifts as a filmmaker as a tool for expressing your personal views on environmental, social, and political issues?
Definitely my dad. My dad ran a TV station in Puerto Rico. That was the first TV station that did any investigative reporting work on, within that medium of television. I'm from Puerto Rico, and most of the TV stations had a sort of action news format, very fluffy, and a lot of entertainment news. And the station that my dad ran was all news. And I was able to work there after school and during summer breaks while I was in high school. And I cut my teeth editing on tape machines, and I also learned how to shoot video. And I was hooked. And, around that age, I was about 16 or 15, that's when I decided that I loved making videos, and I decided to make that my life's work.
Being from Puerto Rico, has being a person of color influenced your politics and art?
Yeah, there's no way to get around that. I mean, maybe if you live in Puerto Rico and you're living amongst Puerto Ricans, you might not notice that you're different from other people. But having spent a lot of time in the United States and Canada, you do realize that you're a minority, and in many cases you are treated differently. And it's inescapable that whether or not you read Marx or Bakunin or Emma Goldman or whoever, if you're a person of color in North America, you are going to be political.
What response have you had from your own community and culture?
For my work, the response has been overwhelmingly good. It's just one of these things that you never know if it's going to work. When I started doing Submedia, I had no idea whether or not people were going to like what I'm doing, and I knew I was taking a huge chance. I was basically taking some very radical positions, and I knew by taking those positions it was going to cut me off from any hope of having any sort of career. But I decided long ago that I was not really interested in career. I'm really interested in creating change. I don't want this to be a side thing, and then maybe things don't work out, I can always fall back on some sort of like commercial, like TV job or something like that. I really want to see changes within my lifetime, and no amount of money is gonna make me stop doing that.
That's good to hear. I guess in regards to NSYD in particular, ideally, what experience or impact would an audience member take away after seeing it?
I have two favorite parts of the film. The film is kind of broken up in little tiny sections. And the first section I really like is the section that deals with indigenous peoples. I think that when people try to imagine another world, they have a really hard time. And a lot of people are always asking, what are your solutions? And sometimes we just don't have to look very far. Sometimes we need to look backwards a little bit in time to see that there's people who've been living here sustainably for thousands of years. They had already figured out a way to live like that. And so I'm hoping that people can see that and understand that there's people still around in North America who can give us a lot of guidance at getting out of this mess, and can show us ways in which we could apply indigenous ways of living into our current world. But the second part is the critique of nonviolence, and sort of like an examination of how the victories supposedly won through nonviolence are whitewash. It's a historical whitewash. And what I'm trying to do with that is not to promote violence, but certainly to think about how bad our situation is, and look at history and look at how movements have actually won victories by the use of all tactics. And I think that is, if there's anything that I really want to push with this, is that we need to be pragmatic and also realistic, and also look at history with a very fair eye. Because when one looks at the struggles of the civil rights, for instance, even though most of them get attributed to Martin Luther King, there was a lot of militant activity that happened that also put pressure on the government to actually cave and actually, give folks, sort of, their civil rights.
What personal lifestyle choices have you made which reflect the views and opinions expressed in your movies?
That's a tough question to ask, because for me, like riding a bicycle might not be the way to change the world, but I would certainly, when I was developing a deeper environmental consciousness, I gave up driving. That has changed recently because I'm on tour, and it was the cheapest way for me to get around. But I'm certainly not very happy that I'm driving a beast around the country. But certainly, I think the biggest lifestyle change I've made is that I've become a full-time activist. So I don't do anything else. I don't have a job. My job is to create media for the movement and for the resistance, and also to organize an independent media infrastructure. I've recently helped set up an independent media co-op in Vancouver that's still going strong, and that media co-op is part of a national network in Canada, and we're trying to spread this idea of cooperative media making elsewhere as well.
Great. Is there any hope for success?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as the situation gets worse and worse, the media is always going to try to find new ways to lie to people about what's going on, and we're doing our part as independent media makers to get the truth out there. But the truth is just going to be so plain that I think that more and more people are going to start waking up, and they're going to start seeking our media because they're going to finally realize that they've been lied to. And so we need to be ready. We need to have good quality material out there. And if we have not just the media, but like infrastructure of resistance like set up, then once people are ready to join us, we'll be more ready to receive them as well. And I think that's totally possible.
Do you have advice for other writers, musicians, or artists who are creating politically focused art?
Yeah, make your art like your life depended on it. Don't half-ass anything. Try to make the best art that you can possibly make, under your resources and your abilities, and you'll see that you'll get better. But I would certainly say that a lot of people get turned off by independent media just because not a lot of effort is put into creating quality work. And what I tell people is that if you look at Hollywood, if you look at the mainstream media, they're in a way somewhat perfectionist, and we need to beat them at that perfectionist game and outsmart them, but also give something palatable that people can actually watch and digest. If we make something crappy, we're not going to get our message out there.
How important do you feel it is for artists or writers to communicate and discuss these topics and themes via art, as opposed to spending time directly involved in a resistance movement? Can you do both?
Yeah, you can certainly do both, and this is a conversation that I've been having with people lately. And art and music are easier ways to infiltrate a person's mind than heart. My own example of politicization was Public Enemy. If it wasn't for them, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have been completely politicized, but certainly I was more attracted to their beats first, and then I started reading their lyrics. And so they created this amazing hybrid of really interesting music, but with like a hard-hitting political message that, in many cases was almost like reading a newspaper, a newspaper from the streets, but in the form of a track. And I think that art and music are probably the things that are going to get us the most converts. And then there's going to be the second tier of media makers who can do the more intellectual and factual work that those folks can actually feed into as well.
Great. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to catch up with us. Is there anything else you want to offer to our viewers before we end the interview? Yeah,
always plug in the website, submedia.tv, and check me out on tour in North America for the next 6 months at nciv.com.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.